Hey, English one. I just want to talk to you. This is my last supplemental video this week that will help you with your project. So you've done a really great job of sending me very specific questions. I've been really happy looking at those, and you've responded very well to my advice. So I'm happy about that. This is probably the bulk of your project, the actual critique itself, and those that occurs on the body. What I'm calling the body of your project, because if this was an essay form, those slides would be the body paragraphs. So I've just got some tips here. It might be helpful for you to go back to your critiquing the media assignment that we did before spring break. That, of course, everything builds on one another. That was the stepping stone to get us here to talk about critique. So tips, I should add a tip here, of course. Write in third person. I can't stress that enough. Anyway, the first one. In your critique, you need to answer the question, does this strategy have a positive or negative effect on the persuasive nature of the media? You've all selected three rhetorical strategies at this point, at least that's my assumption. And not all of those have a positive effect on the persuasive nature of the media. We want to look at the media as objectively as possible, right? Even though it's very subjective. And we were able to see that when we were identifying and locating bias before spring break. So one example I'll give you from an email conversation I had with a student this morning is we were talking about allusions to pop culture references in order to appeal to a younger audience. Is it a good choice or a bad choice? I think it depends on the subject matter, right? If it's something regarding coronavirus, I would argue that that's a bad choice, right? Because that doesn't do anything to increase the credibility of the argument. It just appeals with a younger audience. Right, so you've got our attention, but you're not necessarily increasing your credibility. And that's one strategy that the media uses to be persuasive, right? They use sources, they reference figures that their targeted audience would be familiar with in order to make a claim. You want to make sure you're using verbs that include clear connotation in your critique. For example, consider the word says versus the word advocates. Both are verbs, both are suggesting something, but says has very little connotation, right? If you said, let's say, if I said, I asked my mom if I could stay out past curfew tonight, and she said no. Okay. Does she plain and simple say no? Was there anger? Was there an angry tone? Was she exhausted? Was there some sort of tone of exhaustion? What was the tone? It's really unclear, right? If you include verbs that include clear connotation, like advocates, if you're an advocate, now I'm switching to the noun form here. If you're an advocate for something, you're working to bring attention to it and to bring support to it, right? So if you're advocating something, there's clear connotation that you're for it. Suggest an alternative, right? If you're critiquing something, you want to suggest an alternative. For example, had the source used credible sources such as a doctor instead of somebody with no apparent credibility, the source would have more success persuading their targeted audience. So this goes back to that pop culture reference, right? They don't appear to have any knowledge, at least none that was stated and none that I know, about whatever the subject matter of the article is. Instead, assuming that the subject matter is something like coronavirus, a doctor would have been a more credible source. So that would be my suggested alternative. And of course, write in third person. Now I want to show you an example from CNN. Okay? CNN is a liberal source, and a lot of you used it as your liberal source. And this one talks about what the 50 states are doing in terms of reopening. So here's Florida, right? And Florida has been in the news quite frequently. Right? We've got a Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, and it says here, I'll read it to you. He issued a stay-at-home order for Floridians until April 30th. The governor did not close down the state's beaches as spring breakers partied last month, has not approved retroactive unemployment benefits for those who have lost their jobs, and continues to push hydroxychloroquine, a still unproven drug to treat coronavirus. DeSantis is considering reopening schools in the state, falsely claiming the coronavirus hasn't killed anyone under 25. All right. My screencast is about to end, so I'm going to continue my conversation about this in just 1 second.